Hi and welcome back to Interface Viewing and Navigation. I hope you are as excited as me to dive into BricsCAD, and we will do that by exploring our interface. You also will see that BricsCAD BIM has a unique feel to it. We have both dark modes and white modes, so whatever you feel comfortable with. And other than that, we have a few key unique elements which we will try to highlight in this module. So let me turn to BricsCAD and then we will get started. Alright, let's start with discovering the BricsCAD interface. When starting BricsCAD, a launcher will appear, allowing you to choose between which workspace you want to work in. These workspaces are optimized for the kind of work that you would like to do. You can also create your own workspaces with your own commands, but let's use BIM in this case. Next, you will see the Start screen. This is the Getting Started screen where you will find three tabs: the Home tab, the Learn tab, and the Applications tab. In the Applications tab, you will be redirected to the third-party store. In the Home tab, you will see your recent files, or if you just installed BricsCAD like I did, you will have no recent drawings. But as soon as you make a first drawing, you will have some recent drawings to start off from. Then we also have the Learn section, where you can find some sample files and some tutorials, the link to our Brics' YouTube channel. Then let's start off by creating a new drawing. You can click the New Drawing button so that you can start by launching the template which is specified underneath. There you will see that now the BIM millimeter template is selected. If we click on the arrow, you will be able to select more templates, and as such, you could select a BIM meter template instead, for example, but for now, make sure that you have BIM millimeter template selected and click the New Drawing button. So once you're in the workspace, remember that you set your settings as mentioned in the introduction video. This is to ensure that the rest of the exercises go in the same fashion as we display on this screen. Then first of all, what you will notice is that there is a Brics' icon which displays the file menu. There you will have options such as save and a bunch of other options to print, to export and import, etc. We will refer to this icon as the file menu, but know that it's underneath the BricsCAD icon. Then if we right-click an empty space of the ribbon, you will find that you can also select some settings for your workspace. You can choose which panels to open or close, but most importantly, what I want to show you here is that you can switch the dark interface to a white interface and vice versa. Also note that in the launcher we chose a workspace, but you can always switch that workspace still from your status bar. That's the bottom bar. Where you can still choose the other workspaces, or again right-click an empty space in your interface, and you will see that there is also a workspaces option where you can change your workspace, which will change the interface to the other workspace, which has the tools optimized for that kind of work. But for now, let's stick in the BIM workspace. Then we also have the Access 3D toolbar on top. This is to access the most useful commands in the 3D modeling modes, which is among others also here your visual style, your workspace, the layer a certain entity is on, etc. You can also customize this toolbar if you wish so. Then, of course, the main thing which we see is the ribbon, where we can cover the different ribbon tabs. They all group the commands under the tools under certain categories. And you can launch a command from here, such as drawing a box. You can also switch drawing tabs where you normally see start. That's the start screen. If you would create a new drawing, you would have now 2 open drawings to cycle between. If you right-click on a certain tab, you will also find some sub-options, such as opening the folder where a drawing is stored. Then we also have similar tabs at the bottom of the screen, but these are the model versus layout tabs. The model tab is the main model space area in which you can create 2- and 3-dimensional entities based on either the world coordinate system, which we call the WCS, or the user coordinate system, which we call the UCS. Then you also have some layout tabs there, which look through viewports. They look onto the model space. If you double click inside a viewport, you will actually be entering the model space once again, and you will be able to set the view differently to which you look onto your model space. If you click outside of your viewport on the paper again, then you enter paper space again. What is, or layout space again. What is the true meaning? Well, here we see a paper-like element that's in effect your paper, which you can then plot and then you can print it out. So we always make viewports to look onto what we drew in the model space. And you can make multiple views, so we can zoom. And then you can copy the viewport, and you can, of course, make different views onto one paper. So it's literally a virtual paper that we can see, and we are now in the paper space. Note that the viewport also has a scale. If you go to the properties panel, you will see that now it has a custom scale, but you can always change that scale through the scale list. Of course, the goal of a paper is to print it, and you can also use the print command or Ctrl-P to adjust the size of your paper. And after pressing apply, for example, we are going to switch to A3. After pressing apply, you will see the changes take effect, and the virtual paper will adjust its size. Then, of course, we already touched briefly upon the panels, which are docked to the site. Where we, among others, have the properties panel. You can see a bunch of panels activated. If you right-click, you can actually, in empty space again, you can actually choose which panels you show and which ones you don't want to show. You can also choose how to stack the panels. If you want tabs instead, that's also a possibility. You can also say that either your panels expand over the drawing area, or they, so then no matter if I hide or show, my view stays the same. If you rather want the panels to resize your drawing area, then you can have collapsible stack with icons and resize the drawing when expanding. And then when you have the panels collapsed, your drawing area will be bigger. When you have them open, your drawing area will resize a bit. The specific content of the panels you will discover through the rest of this training. Then something which is not visible now, but which is very useful, is the command line. You can right-click, go to the panels and open the command line from there. Or you can press Shift F2 to show or hide the command line. If you want to see the full prompt history, you can press F2. So when the command line is shown, you will be able to resize it as well. You can also undock this panel, and then you will enter a floating state of the command line. If you dock it again, the docked state is shown. When the command line is shown, I can launch a command, such as the Planner Solid command, and then I can press sub-options through the command line, because they become clickable as soon as the command line is open. Otherwise, you need to type in the capitalized letter, which in this case also displays in orange. And as such, you can reset some settings in this case, and then start with your command. And then finally, we already briefly touched upon it, is the status bar. There you can see that it's at the bottom of your BricsCAD application window, and it contains mainly info about settings which are on or off, such as the eSnap setting, which you can also right-click these options to see more, and you can toggle them easily by pressing them with a left click. Okay, so that was it for the interface. Let's continue with the viewing options in BricsCAD BIM. So you can, for this exercise, you can open a new drawing that with the open command. We will see how we can change the visibility of certain entities, make them hidden or isolated. And we will see how to navigate easily through your drawing. So press the open file icon, and a dialog will appear with the folder, with your folders of on your computer. So we can navigate to the first chapter folder and open the drawing from there. Then you should see a building on which we are now gonna use some of our tools to hide and show certain elements. So first of all, let's select these three big windows. You can just left click on an entity to select it, for this, maybe make sure that all your prioritizations are off. It will be easier in the next part of the exercise. So in the quick access bar, make sure that none of these icons which tell you prioritize are highlighted. And then you can see that now we also have something which is called the quad, which pops up on my screen. We don't need this right now. We can use the quick access toolbar to hide the entities, but note that you could also do so from the quad. We will cover the quad later a bit more in depth. But for now, just try to hide the entities with the quick access bar, and you see that they will be hidden in the model space. They're not deleted. They are just hidden. Okay, so now we can also try to isolate some objects. This is actually the opposite of hiding the objects. You actually make sure that only the selected elements will still remain visible. It's the isolate entities icon. You can again find it through the quad in the select sub-tab of the quad. And then you need the isolate entities one, which calls the command isolate objects. And then you will see only those windows will be isolated. Now, if I want to bring everything back into view, we can also use an isolate objects command, which is also to be found in the general tab of the no selection quad. The no selection quad, you can pop it up by right-clicking in empty space, and then you can unisolate all the objects and everything will be shown again. Another easy tool for viewing in BricsCAD is the structure panel. From here you can also hide and show entities, but in this case you can select them based on their properties of the entity. If you have BIM properties, you will have extra information such as the type of object which you have, such as a wall, a window, and you can group. You can choose the grouping of the structure browser entirely yourself. If you want to switch the grouping type, you will normally by default have a few of these groupings already listed, but you can always change them by clicking the hamburger menu and then going to another preset configuration. You can make your configurations, you can save them yourself, and as such you can go now to the BIM configuration and you can make sure in the settings of the structure browser for the specific configuration you can see the options. And one of the options is making sure that select entities when selected in tree is on. That means whenever you select an entity in the structure panel, by clicking on its name or grouping, then you will also see it selected in the model space. This is convenient for hiding and showing. So here we can make sure that we click on the walls, for example, and then either you could now go to the quick access bar and hide them, but there's also an easy way. If you right click on the grouping name, then you will be able to show, hide, or isolate all these elements from the right click menu onwards. You can also zoom to a certain element. So if you click hide, all the walls will be hidden. If you zoom onto a certain window, for example, you will be taken to that view. And that concludes our viewing in BricsCAD BIM. Let's continue with some navigation tools in BricsCAD BIM, or actually in BricsCAD in 3D in general. As you navigate around and through your 3D model, the location of the model in the space always remains constant. It's really your viewpoint onto the model that changes. You can use mouse or keyboard navigation. The most used mouse and keyboard navigation methods are the mouse wheel, which is to zoom in and zoom out. Pen, which is holding the mouse wheel or middle mouse button and then moving your mouse around. Orbit is the same as pen, but this time we hold down Shift and then we click the middle mouse and then we move our mouse to orbit. Also, we have a View ribbon tab where you can find some viewing tools, such as the real-time constraint sphere that's always orbiting around your model. But this is actually a command, so if you want to exit this, you can press escape and then you are back into your regular navigation of BricsCAD. Then also a useful tool is the Look From navigation tool, which is located in the upper right corner by default. And you can click on the different places to quickly navigate to a certain angle on your model. You can also right-click the Look From tool to have a few extra options, such as the perspective mode, which turns on or off perspective mode. And to learn more about all these extra options in the Look From widget, we refer to the BricsCAD Online Help Center. But you will see us use it throughout this training anyways. And finally, if you want to see the bottom views, you can hold down Control, and then you will look from the bottom onto your drawing. Finally, a last way to navigate quickly through your 3D model is through the BIM sections. First, let me show all the entities again with an isolate objects command. A BIM section is a quick way to create a section in the BIM workspace. You can find it in the Home tab, Define Section. Then you can hover onto a certain face, and then you will your view for your section will be parallel to this face. So if I click it, you will see that we get a live section view throughout our BIM model, which is parallel to the face which we selected before. If I escape this and I do this, run the BIM section command once again, you can also click somewhere outside your 3D model, so not on any geometry, and then you will just create a horizontal section. And then optionally, if you want to lock and make sure that it's certainly this face which is being selected to make a parallel section plane to, you can hit the Shift key, then the face will turn blue, and then you can actually also make a section in a similar way, but you know for sure that now it's based on that orientation of that face. So as soon as you clicked on the face you want the section to be parallel with, you are prompted to specify a distance. You can either click, but then it's best to click outside of your model so that you don't accidentally snap to a certain location, or you could type in a value from the face, such as 6 meters in this case, and then we can press enter to accept that value. And then the BIM section is made. And that's actually here, this line, and it's called a section object. We have different types of BIM sections. A plan will show you a horizontal, will clip horizontally. A section, which I just made, will clip through vertically. And an elevation, which will not clip any geometry, but will just look from the side onto our geometry and shows an exterior elevation view. Each of these types have different trackers, and the BIM section tracker that is used while creating your section actually also delivers you information about the viewing direction, which you will see which is the arrow, and the plane where it will be cut, or which orientation of the plane will have of your section. And then you can delete or clip and unclip sections by you can delete them by just selecting it and pressing the delete button. You can clip them by double clicking them. You can clip and unclip them. And with regards to the properties panel, you can also find here the status, if it's clipped or not, a section plane, by looking at the clip display setting. If you select a certain section, you can also, of course, select all your sections and make sure they're all unclipped by making sure that the clip display is set to no, and then you are sure that none of these sections are clipped. So again, a useful way to apply the structure browser, the properties panel, and our clipping states. Also in the properties panel, when you don't have anything selected, you will be able to select the visual style and some perspective options and camera modes, etc. In this next part, I will demonstrate how to work with the quad cursor and highlight and select 3D model entities. For this, we will start a new drawing, and we will start in the BIM millimeter template, and we will click the plus button in the Go to Start menu. How do we use the quad? Well, the quad is a floating toolbar that adjusts its content depending on what you are highlighting and what you may have selected in the current workspace. So the first thing which we can do is we can right-click in empty space, and then the quad will appear in no selection state. It will also say no selection on top of the quad. You can move over to the Model tab, and there click the box icon. This is the box command, and you can simply launch it from the quad and start drawing a box immediately. Now hover over one of the faces. To do this, make sure that the prioritize selection of faces is on, but more on that we will see in just a bit. As soon as you hover over the solid face, the quad cursor will appear, and you will be able to, for example, push-pull a certain face from the Model tab once again. Now, if you hover again over the solid face, you see that the first command which is suggested is push-pull. This is because the quad remembers the last used commands on a certain type of entity. In that sense, it's a smart tool to help you model quickly and efficiently. Now, more about the selection modes. Selection modes can be found in the Access 3D toolbar on top of your screen. You can click the Faces option and the Boundary options. What does this mean? Well, the prioritized selection of edges means that when you are hovering over an edge, it's the first thing that will be selected, will be highlighted is the solid edge. And then, as soon as you hover over it and click it, then you will be selecting the solid edge. Same goes for prioritized selection of faces. As soon as you hover over a solid, it's not the solid that will be seen first. It will first see the faces itself, and only after it saw the faces, it will detect the solid. This means if I hover over an entity, I immediately will highlight the solid face. Once I click, I can also select the solid face. Now, how do I select a solid entirely when the face detection is prioritized? You simply hold down Ctrl, and then you can highlight the entire solids. As soon as I now click, you will select the entire entity. So when your prioritized selection of faces is highlighted, the faces will be prioritized over the solid. If you put both of them off, it will always prioritize the solid first. So as soon as I hover over my solid now, the entire solid is selected. Now the opposite is true. When I hold Control, the subface will select rather than the entire solid, which appeared on Control whenever we had the prioritized selection of faces on. And then we still have boundary detection. To demonstrate that, I will just draw a circle from one of the corners of the box. And you see that now a green area gets highlighted, and this is the boundary. It's not a part of an element. It's not really in the element itself that it can be found, but due to the combination of certain elements, the boundary can be detected. So a 2D entity on top of a 3D entity can determine a boundary. That's one instance, but also two solids on top of each other can determine boundaries. And now you can actually start extruding the boundary as well. So you don't always need to have a subface selected for extrude or push-pull. If you don't highlight boundary if you don't enable boundary detection, of course, these boundaries won't be found. Then finally, we will also see what the difference is between. Okay. And we will also see what the difference now is between highlighting and selecting entities. A highlighted face, if we prioritize selection of faces once again, will be displayed with orange edges. As soon as we click it, it will stay with orange edges, but now we will see in the properties panel that we in fact really have selected the solid face. For the highlight of solids is if it's all in blue, then the solid is highlighted. As soon as I click the solid, the green grips appear as well. And then you know the solid is selected. For an edge, you can also, if none of the faces or edges is prioritized, you can still hover over the area of the edge, like approximately in the area of the edge, and hold down Control, and then you will also be able to select the solid edge. The edge selects in green, and when it's selected, you will see here in the properties panel that the edge is selected. Now, finally, we will also see how we can use selection windows. For this, I will draw two boxes. A blue selection box appears when creating a window from left to right, like this. A blue selection window means that only things entirely inside the blue selection box will be selected. So in this case, the second box will not be selected. If you select from right to left, on the other hand, then everything which crosses this window or is inside this window will be selected. So in this case, the second box will be selected as well. Now we can also use selection boxes together with the hotkey assistance, which is here. If you now, the hotkey assistance tells you that as soon as you toggle Control once, you enter a different mode. You enter the faces mode, where you will be selecting the faces of the solid rather than the solid itself. Again, blue indicating everything completely falling inside will be selected, everything else won't be selected. Same principle, but this time everything which crosses will be selected. And if we hold down Control, if we toggle Control, 2 times, then we will and have the edges selected. The edges which are inside the selection box will be selected. On these edges you can now do operations with the help of the quad, such as a fillet and so forth. So to select faces or edges, you can also use these selection boxes rather than only clicking them with the prioritized selection of faces or edges modes. Okay, so this was the interface viewing and navigation module. We saw the interface, we saw how to view in BricsCAD BIM, how to navigate and how to select entities and use the quad cursor. I hope you enjoyed this video and make sure to check out the next modules of this training course.